Do you want Instagrammers or TikTokers to post about your brand? Or do you actually want to engage creators who influence their audience to buy your product? If you're in the latter of those two, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. Hello again, friends. Thanks for tuning into Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. When someone says they run an influencer marketing agency, what comes to mind? I asked a few brand side folks I know that question in the last week or two and have received a number of different responses. Some people say they think of an ad agency only that focuses on influencers. Others say a consultant or small shop that handles all that busy work for you. Another contact said they think of the team at the software company they use, like CIPIO.ai, for instance, which does the cat herding, as it were. The truth is, none of those answers are wrong. The third party that handles some degree of influencer marketing for you is probably the right answer, regardless of which pieces of the puzzle are theirs. But in truth, there is a difference between a software company that has managed services and a strategic consultant. That's different from an influencer marketing agency that focuses on influencer campaigns and one that does more media planning and buying around influencer content. The influencer marketing agency label is really a big sea of muddy water. Brad Hoos runs an influencer marketing agency. It's called the Out Loud Group. They're based in Detroit, and they handle all aspects of influencer marketing from soup to nuts. They aren't a software company, though they use software and probably several different versions of software to help manage their work. They do more than just strategy, and they do more than just execution. Who better to break down not just the various facets of what a brand might need out of influencer marketing, but the ins and outs of influencer campaigns, choosing the right creators, negotiating with the big and little egos in the creator world, and such than Brad. I asked him to come pay a visit to the old Influence bar here on Winfluence and chat a bit about the state of things. The Out Loud Group's approach is a little different than some agencies, and they've got some interesting clients and case studies, of course. They've been around for 16 years. But it's also an opportunity for me to bounce one of my ranty ideas off someone who can push back and tell me I'm wrong if I am. So we'll get into that a little bit too. Brad Hoos from the Out Loud Group is coming up on Winfluence. As always, this episode of Winfluence is presented by CIPIO.ai. It is a software platform with some managed services, not to be confused with an agency. The software helps brands transform their digital marketing with user-generated content, videos, and images at scale. Now, why do we do that? Shopify data shows user-generated content quadruples your ad click-through rates compared to brand creative that you are probably currently using. UGC drives as much as 7 times more engagement on social media. It improves website conversions by as much as 29% and email click-through rates by as much as 73%. UGC is also more trusted by consumers than even traditional influencer content. CIPIO.ai plugs you into your own community of users who create great content or a more broad set of content creators and helps you engage them to do it for your brand. Your digital marketing performs better. You don't have to go looking for content to use for paid or owned campaigns. And CIPIO has a team to manage it all for you if you like. And by the way, the next generation of what CIPIO.ai has in store for you is already here. Imagine turning to an AI prompt and asking CIPIO.ai to find snippets of UGC from your catalog of content and stitch those together into a 15 or 30 second or 60-second video ad ready for use on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. It's here, and I want to show it to you. Go to jasonfalls.co/CIPIO. Fill out that form. I will personally set up time to chat with you. I'll show you how we can scale the acquisition of UGC for your brand, then turn all that user-generated content into ready-to-go video ads that will cut your ad production time and budget in fragments of what you're likely spending now. That address again, jasonfalls.co/CIPIO, CIPIO. Fill out that form. It'll come to me. I'll set up a time to talk and show you everything. Scale your UGC and solve a whole bunch of content problems for paid and owned campaigns for a surprisingly reasonable price. jasonfalls.co/CIPIO. the power of an influencer marketing agency, and am I wrong about a few things? Brad Hoos from the Out Loud Group will tell us next on Winfluence. Brad, in the intro to the show today, I asked what people thought of when they heard influencer marketing agency. And I had a lot of different answers from people that I asked prior to the intro of the show, recording all that. But is part of the industry's problem that we don't really have clearly defined lanes for all the different things we do?
Yes. and when you said you asked people what they thought about influencer marketing agencies, I thought you were going to come with some venom, right? Maybe you still got that in your back pocket about what people were saying, because one of the things that we see, and we've been around for 16, 17 years now, but there's a lot of Johnny come latelys, is what we say. There's folks who pop up. They might not have expertise, but they can get 2, 3, 4 influencers, by hook or by crook, and suddenly they're recommended to brands, and they're an influencer agency, right? and so I do think there's a little bit of misperception that guides real perception out there a little bit, and we're always happy to try to address that sort of thing head on. But I think it's rightful if there is a little bit of hesitation from folks out there when they hear influencer agency.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right there. I love the content creators who suddenly become either an agency or a talent manager. And you're like, okay, I understand if you're entrepreneurial and, you're trying to, expand your, income, revenue streams, footprint, whatever. Right. And I'm not saying that that's not possible for people to do, because several people have done it very, very well. But I love the, I guess, I don't know if it's the piss and vinegar or something in the younger crowd, the 20 somethings who they've been a content creator for a couple of years. They know what they're doing. Right. They're good at creating content. And then they suddenly think they can run an agency and deal directly with brands and all that kind of stuff. And some can. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm always amused at how many there are who think, oh, I know how to, do Instagram videos, so I can actually run an agency. I can run a business. That always kind of, I don't know, chips away at I just laugh these days. I appreciate it. I don't do the get off my lawn thing anymore, but I used to.
Well, the very brashness, I can figure it out, I got this, is how I'm sure they became a fantastic content creator.
Yeah.
And you're right. There are some that can, but for most, it's a different skill set to be a content creator versus to, strategically guide the marketing, for different brands. You got to really understand what a brand is trying to achieve before you can figure out what the right partner is. So they've as content creators, they've found the right brands for them. But when you're advising a brand, you got to help figure out of the sea of different marketing channels that you could pick, which ones should you, and influencer may or may not even be part of that mix.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest weakness I see in that set of, youngsters who are trying to do this, is they've only been a content creator. They haven't worked at an agency. They haven't worked at a brand. They don't see marketing from the big picture. And so they're saying influencer. It's like, well, what about paid spend? What about channel partners? What about, what about all the things that a broad, educated, experienced marketing professional knows? And that's, some of them, I think, see that weakness and they understand it. And they're like, nope, this is my lane. If you want something in this lane, we're good. If it's not in my lane, I'm not good. But others, think that marketing is, well, let's just get you a YouTube video up or something like that, and it's done, which is always interesting. So just to kind of check some boxes here and kind of follow on the original question of, we don't have clearly defined lanes. I think the big buckets in the industry are, you've got people who, and agencies who specialize in or are really good at influencer marketing strategy. I think there's a subset or a parallel, sort of right next door part of that, which I would call creative concepting. And it's not necessarily creative or creative direction, but it's like, hey, how are you going to tie these content creators together into a cohesive campaign? And that's a little different than, it's not exactly strategy, but it's not exactly creative. It's kind of a blend of the two. Then you've got campaign execution, people who I'm going to go find your creators. We're going to, get them to sign contracts. We're going to herd the cats. Then you've got paid media. So, okay, now we're going to amplify all this content in a certain way. And then you've got the software world, which breaks down into a bunch of different subsegments, because you've got software that's really good at discovery, software that helps you with the communications and collaboration process. You've got elements of contracting and agreements in there. Then you've got the content exchange approvals, and then you've got measurement. So that's a big swath, broad thing. I'm pretty sure that the Out Loud group does all of that, but who should be doing that for what sized businesses, and where does that break down in your mind?
Right. Yeah. So I agree with all the buckets you have. I mean, I personally categorize them slightly differently, but we get to the same spot, right? I'd say it's more strategy, and then media planning, and then execution, which includes a whole lot of stuff, and then reporting and analytics, right? But ultimately it's the same thing. So I think, look, for brands early on, this kind of gets back to your point a little earlier, is that I wouldn't recommend a brand start with influencer in most cases, right? There's no one size fits all. I would say make sure that you've optimized your SEO, which is free and will help you in the long term. So start there. Then try to make sure you're hitting the keywords online, SEM, that are really important for you. And then ramp up your paid media to make sure, your meta ads, whatever the case may be, are up to snuff and getting some traffic and getting some people to be aware of you. And then when that sort of plateaued a bit, or maybe you're in a land grab, like, FanDuel versus DraftKings, or Ancestry versus 23andMe, or Blue Apron versus HelloFresh, whatever the case may be, and you need to really, really step on the gas, then do influencer. And an influencer can be effective full funnel, and you got to figure it out. But generally speaking, the time to engage an agency, especially someone that can be more full service, is once you're really ready to find a channel that can scale and be consistent. So if you're trying to do a one-off campaign here or there, where you're still not really sure, how your product should connect to the market, it's probably not the right time to holistically try to engage influencers. That doesn't mean you can't try one off, two off. That can be good, but I wouldn't engage an agency at that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the worst things that I've seen brands do, one of the worst mistakes I've seen brands make in the influencer marketing space, is just what you said. They don't really know who they are yet. They don't really know what they're doing, where they're going, what their ideal customer profile looks like, what their personas are. They haven't defined a clear path of who they want to get to and what they want to say to them. And so then they turn to an influencer who doesn't have any idea of what the brand's trying to do. And if the brand isn't able to tell them clearly, then the creator's just like, okay, well, I'll just go create some content that engages people and will mention you. And that does basically nothing.
Right.
And so that's the biggest mistake that I see brands make, is they go to influencers before they even know how to go to an audience or the market itself.
Right. But they might think that they do, or they have a hypothesis and they're going to talk about it really confidently, but they don't really know. I will talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit here. And that's where, if a brand recognizes they're still trying to figure out how to connect their product with the marketplace, and they're willing to experiment a little bit, then creators are fantastic. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to recognize that you need some help with that, because it's one thing to understand something, it's another to understand it well enough to teach it to somebody else, and creators have to teach somebody else. So when you're trying to, if you have a new product launch or a rebrand, or you're trying to figure things out, creators can be really helpful, because they're, very smart people, and they can craft different ideas and approaches for how to connect your product with the market. But if you have a hypothesis and you only want to go down that, but it's really not fleshed out, then influencers are a bad idea. But there is an angle where, if you really are willing to let go and try to figure out how your product fits with what customers want, influencers are actually pretty good at trying to identify that. But there's very, very few brands that I've interacted with who are comfortable sort of letting influencers help to figure out their value proposition.
So tell us a little bit more about the Out Loud group and take us back to kind of when it started. What gap were you trying to fill when you started, and how has that evolved? How's it different maybe from when you started?
Yeah. So, to answer who we are today first. So we're a full service influencer agency. So we like to, fancy ourselves as a white glove treatment. So, we work with brands to help understand what are you trying to achieve, which sounds straightforward, but I can't tell you how many times people have come to us with our board says we should be doing TikTok, right? and we can do TikTok, right? Yeah. I mean, and in fairness, plenty of CMOs are like, I think we need to do podcasts on NPR. We need to hear on NPR. And it's like, well, we can do that, but why is a better question. And that generally speaking, in 95% of cases is not the right move. But so, trying to help a brand to really crystallize what they're trying to achieve, I think is important, because most cases brands are sophisticated folks, right? They know what they're doing, but we know influencer real well, and we can help to guide it and think through it a little bit. So we help them to figure out what the strategy is. And then, we identify the right platforms, the right creators, whether it should be paid or organic, make all the content go live, make sure the creators have everything they need, get the previews, get the content live. And then, the real work starts with the reporting and analytics to figure out what worked, what didn't, how should you evolve things. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell, as an agency. We work with a whole bunch of, big brands. But going back to how we started, it's interesting. So there's two of us that own the business, and my business partner Joel, he actually started the business, and he was a high school teacher, and was into history, had a history podcast, and grew it to get some listeners, and sure enough, market tanked. They said, hey, while we're happy to be an advertiser, we have to offer you 10% of what we initially thought. But we do have more budget. So if you have other podcasts that need advertising, we'd be open to it. So being an enterprising chap, he started to try to find other podcasts for this brand. And next thing you know, fast forward, a bit, he's sitting between GoToMeeting PC, which at the time was a big advertiser, and like the Wall Street Journal, I believe. And then he helped to try to monetize audio content for, thoughtful content from the right and left politically. And then it just kind of evolved to podcast, and then it evolved into YouTube. And he's working for for another agency as sort of like the whitelisting, like behind the scenes guy. And we got connected, at which point, he was working with a bunch of, big brands, although for the most part, not directly. It was just him. And, I come from I got a couple degrees in engineering and an MBA, so I'm overeducated and, like starting stuff, and had done that in the past. And we started, talking, and I think ultimately, like for me, the problem I personally was trying to solve, this is for Brad, not for the Out Loud group, was like, hey, what's a business that I want to, build and grow for the long term? Cause that's what excites me. And I think, neither Joel nor myself came into this because we thought influencer marketing was, the cat's meow, and we were really into it. But it's a dynamic industry that we really, came to appreciate. And frankly, like the more I've done it, like when it's done right, it's still the most authentic form of advertising, where you have someone who really believes in a product, who's advocating for it, and they've got a big microphone. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And now, that's the glass half full, which still exists, by the way, with a lot of creators. But, unfortunately, there's plenty of creators who will shill for anything, and they just see it as dollars as opposed to endorsement. Yeah. And that's, I've sort of gone into the best parts and the most challenging parts of the industry all at once here. But, to this day, we still believe in influencer marketing. I think, it's proven to be lasting, something that's not a trend, and it lasts over time. And it's something that is forecasted to continue to grow and grow going forward.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, and people have heard on this show, people who listen to the show have heard this argument before from me, but I think it's worth reiterating. Influencer marketing isn't new, and it's, the paid, earned, owned, and shared channels, if you want to use the peso, sort of methodology of the channels in which we communicate. That's not new either. They're new labels. They're new monikers that we've put on them. But how we've communicated to audiences over the years, if you're not doing a paid advertisement, then you've got that earned media. And what public relations, media relations has always been is finding a trusted third party who's talking to the audience you want to reach. That's and right. Working through them to have them tell them about your product, your service, your thing. And so that is at its core the definition of influencer marketing. We've been doing this for a long damn time. And there's some gray areas where it bleeds over into advertising. It bleeds over into celebrity endorsement and things like that. But this isn't going away. We've just put a new coat of paint on it and calling it something different.
That's right. That's right. When I was growing up, you'd listen to the radio, you hear, "This is Bob from WXYZ. I had a fantastic burger at the Village Tavern last night. Why don't you go down to the tavern and tell Bob the bartender I sent you?" Right? I mean, that stuff's been happening for decades, and there was things that happened before that as well. But it's not new to your point.
Well, and I love I had Tony Garcia from the Bob and Sherry Show. He's the executive producer of the Bob and Sherry Show. He was on not too long ago, and he brought up a great point that reminded me of sort of that, sort of the paid endorsement, but done in a way that you don't think it's a paid endorsement. He reminded me of Paul Harvey. And if you listen to Paul Harvey, the old radio announcer back in the 70s and 80s, he would be 2 minutes into a story before you realized it's an ad.
Right.
He's selling a product here, but the way he did it was so on brand for his storytelling style that you were captivated by the advertisement. It was probably one of the first, I would think, native advertisements in the way we think of native advertisements and branded content today. It was one of the first ones that meets our current, modern definition of it. There were advertorials back in the 20s and 30s, but those Paul Harvey commercials, and I'll try to dig some up and put some links out there to share with people to see, for the younger folks who don't know who Paul Harvey is. It was really amazing if you were listening to that, because you literally every episode was like, "Oh my God, he got me again. This is a freaking commercial."
And now you know the rest of the story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but no, that definitely resonates with me, and it's funny because we do represent over the years. We've had a number of creators come to us and say, "Hey, we really like working with you. Will you handle all our deals?" We say, "Hey, we're not a Hollywood talent agency." Like, yeah, we know that. That's why we're asking you. So we do represent some big creators. That's not the core of our business, but where I was going with this is, a lot of times when creators are early on, they can struggle doing brand deals and they're trying to figure it out. And the message I always give to creators and anyone listening, it's think of this as an extra opportunity for content for your audience. Like, don't think of it as an ad or things you need to say. Like, this is content you get to create for your audience. And when creators sort of have that flip switch, and it's like, oh, this is something where I can tell a story like Paul Harvey did 40 years ago. Yes. Or I can make something fun and engaging that my audience will like, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I have to hit these 5 bullet points." They're going to be a lot more successful 99 times out of 100.
Yeah. Well, that's where that creative concepting that I mentioned earlier comes into play, is how can I, as a strategist, help my clients, help the brands that I work with, talk to these creators and say, "Look, this isn't a sponsored post. This is, we have a concept, we have an idea that we think is right. Maybe it is, maybe you can tweak the idea a little bit, but we're trying to help them do what you just said, create content for their audience that in a relevant way brings the product or the brand into the conversation in a way that the audience is going to go, oh yeah, that's a great solution." Right. So yeah, cool. Before we go to break, I know that you guys, and I've talked to you about this before, you guys lead with strategy and data. Your messaging on your website, whatnot, that's right. Strategy and data are all over the place. So when it comes to data, I'd love for you to give people a sense of the resources you'll use on a given campaign, and what data are you looking at? What are the metrics that you're looking at most frequently to help your clients' campaigns succeed?
Okay. So I could answer that a lot of ways. You said most frequently. So most frequently, we're working with brands that are trying to use influencer as primarily, not exclusively, but primarily a direct response campaign, right? So they want sales. And so when we're doing that, we're just like the stock market. We're big believers that historical performance is the best indicator of future performance. So like I mentioned earlier, we've been doing this for 16 years now. And so as part of that, we have a lot of data in terms of understanding which creators have historically pushed their audience to a brand's webpage and have pushed that audience to make a conversion. And so the number one piece of data that we have that I haven't seen anybody else with that. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm just not aware of it. But it's looking at and understanding for similar brands, right, targeting similar demographics, which creators have that trust with their audience enough that they are able to push their audience to a brand's website and then to make conversion. So that's really a huge part of what we're doing. And so we're starting to try to identify, based on this historical performance, who are the creators that are most likely to be successful for a brand. And then we'll scale things and we'll evolve them and look for similar type creators once we find those who are actually working for the brand that we're working with. But that's really our approach from a data perspective that we've found, especially right now, when it's a little bit more challenging, that has been really helpful for brand partners.
So to follow up with that, none of the influencer marketing tools and platforms that I know of offer up, oh, here's this creator's conversion rate. Like, that's not information that you can surface in a tool or a search. Quite frankly, you can't really get that information out of creators very often either when you ask them directly for it. What are the data points that you're looking at? How are you indexing this so that you have that insight to know this group of content creators over here can drive conversions, this group not so much?
Yeah. So I maybe not so eloquently say there's bullshit engagement metrics, which are sort of like, shares, comments, and they're meaningful from a creator perspective, but they're not meaningful from a brand perspective. And what we do is like, hey, when we see creators working with our brands that we've worked with for a long time, we have that data, and we can see, well, if I'm trying to sell a cell phone versus a cup of coffee, the CPAs that you're willing to pay as a brand are going to be very different. But what we do know is there's better performing and worse performing creators for each of those. So pretty simply, every creator who we would run with is going to, for the cup of coffee, is going to get scored somewhere between the 0th percentile and the 100th percentile. And all that means, are you the best performing creator, or you're either the worst? And then you do that for the coffee, and you do that for the cell phone, and you do that for the security system, and you sort of layer that up. And now I'm just looking at this creator, and now I've got a stack of dots that tells me, is this creator historically performed closer to the 0th percentile or closer to that, 80, 85th, and higher percentile? And so you see these historical trends of, wow, this creator's actually performed well. And so, we get all that data. That's not data that we can share, externally, obviously, but that I think this is one of the reasons that folks would go to an agency, because they do have this ability to be able to zero things in, and we're not playing a guessing game, or we're not just looking at folks who match with interests, but we're looking at some real historical performance data.
Very, very cool. Well, I wish I had access to all your damn data, because I'm looking for that stuff too all the time, but whatever. Maybe we can partner on something.
There you go.
We are talking to Brad Hoos. He is with the agency, the Out Loud Group from the Detroit Rock City. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about authenticity and a couple of other things. So do not go away. Welcome back to Winfluence, talking to the Out Loud Group's Brad Hoos. We've been talking a lot about creators and data and what data is important and all that good stuff. Brad, I know that you have been thinking a lot lately, and because I've seen some articles that you've written on authenticity. We've talked about data. I'm curious. I want to ask a similar question to what I asked before the break. What data points do you look at if you're looking at a content creator that might surface authenticity? How can we prove that out as this person is more authentic than another? Are there any data points that kind of come to mind for you there?
Yeah, so the A word is, as I like to say, because there's so much talk about authenticity. I think those of us who are working in influencer marketing every day get a little tired of the word, but it is a great word. Like I actually think it's the right word to describe it. It just gets it's so readily used. But again, I might sound like a little bit of a broken record here, but ultimately, authenticity begets trust. And when you trust a recommendation, you're much more likely to take some action on that recommendation, right? So, good friend of mine who I trust, he recommends a restaurant. Good chance I'm going to go check out that restaurant. If I just hear about that restaurant from someone else on a subway, very low likelihood that I'm going to actually go take that. So, for me, it's really trust, and the best way to see trust is how have people behaved when that creator has advocated for a brand in the past. So we really do rely upon that pretty heavily. But another way, and this is something that, to be honest with you, we don't track, but maybe we should, is how often a creator says no to brand deals. Because if a creator says no frequently, they're probably being very authentic. I mean, there's a lot, you walk into a bar, right? There's a lot more liquors on the shelf that I'm not going to drink than I am. And, so I probably haven't, consumed 80% of those. And so if someone asked me to advertise for them, I mean, I guess, sure, I could try it and maybe I'd be a convert and that can actually be a successful form. But in a lot of cases, like, well, I just happen to not be a tequila fan, right? So I'm not going to advocate for tequila. So we say creators say no a lot. Man, that really helps, and that's a great proxy for being able to tell how effective a creator will be when they say yes, is how often they say no.
Yeah, that's a good point. So kind of as a follow on to that, I've had something that's been stuck in my craw lately, which that happens with me a lot. I have apparently a big craw and it's kind of sticky. So, but anyway, so when I have reached out to creators over the years, one of the things that frustrates me about reaching out to a creator or a talent manager oftentimes is the go-between there as well.
Sure.
I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I'm working with this client. Here's sort of the campaign idea. I've got some creative ideas on how you could be incorporated, because I always lead with the creative concept. It's not, to me, it's not about a sponsored post. It's about doing something creative that's going to get people talking. And so when I reach out with that kind of ask, I get really frustrated when the response is, what's your budget? Because that means they're thinking of money first. They're not thinking about the audience. They're not thinking about the brand. They're thinking about how much they can get out of this. Sure. I also get really frustrated when the first response is, well, here's my media kit. So if you have a budget, you can respond to me after that, because that to me is just arrogance. It's just, you do, again, you're not listening to me. You're just saying, here's the space that you can rent on my Instagram feed. Dingle, dingle, dingle. I'm curious, when you are reaching out to creators, how do you respond to those one-off media kit responses or lack of creativity on the influencer side?
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because I feel like there's two different types of content, and there's actually probably like 15, but big buckets. There's two different types of things that we're doing. So one of them, which I think is what you're describing, is we do have like a creative, we have a handful of creative concepts, usually 3 plus or minus, that, we're excited about, and we're trying to find the right creators who can help to bring those to life for a brand. And of course, put their own spin on it and do it in their own voice. And then the other is where, it's pretty evergreen, pretty straightforward, where like, hey, here's the set of talking points you have to hit. However you want to do it, go for it. And again, we love the creativity, but it's like, however you want to do it, go. Like this is what's needed. But especially when, it's creative, if it's creative driven, this is the part that's not super scalable up the industry, but we'll try to get on a call with creators as much as possible to be able to explain it, to like share the creative concepts a little bit as well. And then also we always try to open up the door for what they may want. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Content creators, hey, they know their audience, they know how to connect with them. So I think from a creator perspective, to flip this a little bit, sometimes creators can be like, what is this this brand coming in here and telling me what creative they want and how to do things. And I think they can feel like, well, that can be a little bit arrogant too, to come in with that. And so, like, just like if you were standing in line, there's people are not going to like walk 15 people up the line and cut in front of you, but they might do that exact same thing in a car. Like, I feel like over email with someone you haven't met, creators are more likely to be a little bit short and terse, and they're probably not going to do that on a phone call. So, again, not scalable, not something that can always be done. But that's one thing that we always do try to do to try to get, to get to a little bit of a better spot with that creative angle.
Yeah. I had actually today, I reached out to someone and said, hey, I'd love to get on a call and talk to you about this because it's not something that I can just summarize in an email. And the response was, well, here's my media kit. Let me know if you have a budget. And so I immediately replied and said, never mind. Don't want to talk to you.
Right.
You're not the kind of creator I'm looking for. So
right. No, I think that a healthy back and forth, like it's a classic Venn diagram, and you got to figure out where there's that overlap. And if someone's not willing to play ball at all, hey, when someone reveals their true colors, they're not a bad person for doing that, but like you should listen when they tell you that. So if they're not wanting to partner with you and to really collaborate on something, then move on. There are a lot of creators out there, not to, call, the creators are not commodities, but, creators do need to realize too, a brand has a lot of options. There are
you got a lot of competition out there. So it's probably best to, at least hear us out,
That's right.
It'll be good. Yeah. All right. Now I promised everybody, in the preamble to having you on, I promised everybody a rant. And I've made this rant before. I'm going to make it again. And I want to basically bounce this idea off of you and see what you have to say about it, because I think I'm probably wrong. And so I'm asking other people in the industry to tell me I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, if I'm not, great. I'd be happy for you to agree with me. But I have decided, after doing this for many, many years, that if someone comes to me, particularly talent managers, this is where they get in the weeds sometimes with me. And they say, well, we have a licensing fee for use of his or her image. I think licensing fees, which are slightly different from usage rights, but licensing fees to wrap it up in that package for a content creator on the internet is complete and utter bullshit. And the reason I say that is because if that content creator walks into my Target or Walmart, nobody knows who the fuck they are. Like they are not culturally relevant to massive populations. If you're a Kardashian or you're Shaq or you're someone like that, licensing your image is a very different ballgame because you affect millions of people with your content, with your opinions, with your behavior, etc. But someone who's got a couple 100,000 followers or even 1 million followers on Instagram or TikTok, to me, is not a celebrity. They're a content creator, and they are not culturally relevant. If most of the people in the free world don't know who the fuck you are, you don't get to charge licensing fees. Now, usage rights is a little bit different, but I also get a little tight on that. But let me just stop there and have you react to that and see what you have to say.
Well, Jason, I could agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. Shout out to my friend Jake Siegel, who's the first one I ever heard that from. I'd never had the opportunity to use that until now, because I know you'll take that in the spirit it was intended. But no, look, here's the deal. So to go to an extreme, which is the point you made, if it's Shaq, if it's Mr. Beast, if it's Mark Rober, like you absolutely should be paying to be able to use the image of a content creator on a subway or wherever else. I think they aren't maybe if you go to less of an extreme to someone with 100,000 followers. You're right. They're not someone who is culturally relevant in the mass market, but at the same time, we're engaging creators because they are relevant within their community, right? And so creators over time, I think, have developed that strength, and you're engaging them for the years and years of that domain expertise and building that audience, not necessarily for that, for for the content that they're producing on that day. You're really engaging creators for that content. And if you want to start to extend that as a partnership, creators have risk with the depth of a brand, brand partnership as well. There's plenty of brands that out there that have, gotten to be a little bit more challenging. And I think it's funny when a brand will do a one-off with a creator and then want to, use that content for months and months and months. It's sort of like, well, hold on a minute here. Like, we want this to be an authentic partnership. And I think, the partnership's got to go two ways. So I hear you. And I especially think that the smaller you are, if you're a UGC creator, then all that is a negotiating tactic, and, Godspeed, right? They're trying to get, more money for the same amount of effort, and whether they call it usage or licensing, which are different things to your point, but or the period of those, or the number of platforms that you have usage for, they're all negotiating tactics. So, hey, like, if people want to negotiate harder, go for it. But I think if you're a brand and you're targeted, if you're in the hunting and fishing world, and you're using hunting and fishing influencers who only have 100,000 followers, hey, that still really matters, and that creator is not going to be able to work for a competitor as well. So, in that case, I do think it makes sense for them to be able to charge, a fee for you to use their name, image, likeness, because now they're going to be sellouts if they're advertising for a competitor, as well. Even if it contractually you don't have exclusivity as an influencer, your audience is your career, and you got to guard that very, very carefully. So it might be a little bit overprotective, but I do think there's nothing wrong with creators wanting to do that. But the point being, smaller creators especially can think that they are a little more important in the bigger scheme of things. That I would say that definitely remains. But
yeah. I still can't get over a couple years ago, and I brought this up half a dozen times or more on the show. I still can't get over the Instagram creator I reached out to a couple years ago. She had, I think, 48,000 followers on Instagram at the time, which a lot of people would consider a micro influencer. And for one Instagram post back then, it wasn't real, it was just a post. She wanted $7,500, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was like, good luck. If you can find anybody to pay you that for that audience, and her engagement rate was okay. It wasn't great, but all told, I just wasn't. And that was just for the content. That didn't have anything to do with licensing or usage rights or anything. It was just
they wanted more for licensing and usage rights. Huh?
Yeah. I was just like, sweetheart. I mean, now, in her defense, I took the way that I read that was, I'm not interested in working with you or that brand. Right.
Yeah.
And that was clear, just pricing herself out of it. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I would just prefer you to say, it's not a good fit for me. That would be better than pricing yourself out. But whatever.
It's a good point. I do see that with content creators from time to time, right? Let's say you got a campaign that needs to be running in the month of December. Mm-hmm. And as a content creator, I've got 6 things that I've already committed to for December. And it's like, well, to do a 7th, that's going to be like really stressful, but I'll do it if the price is right. So, just like working overtime, they might throw a rate out there that's 3x what they usually charge just to see if you do it. And if not, they're happy to walk away. And I think that's where it's just like buying a house, right? It's like one of the most important things, you got to be willing to walk away and know it's something that's not the right value for that. And when you're trying to find the right creators for a brand, that's so important.
That's true. So I have to ask about muskox. And for those of you out there who don't know, because I haven't talked about it a lot on this show yet, I have a new music podcast called Roots Music Rambler. And that show is an affiliate of muskox, which is premium flannel. There's one hanging back here. I'll widen out the shot so people can see it a little bit better. But this is a muskox flannel. And I found out about muskox talking to Brad, Brad, you and or the agency started the brand. Give us a little bit of the background on this.
Yeah, we did. And it's really, I'm definitely the one who's shepherding it and passionate about it. So we started muskox with a creator that we've worked with very deeply for a number of years, Matt Carricker of Demolition Ranch and Off the Ranch. That ranch is as well, though he's no longer involved in that channel. But we were working on a deal with a potential big, camo company. And, deals don't just, fall apart overnight. So we weren't sure if this deal was going to happen. And we sort of we're talking and we're like, I don't know if this deal is going to happen, but do we really even need this brand, or should we just launch this ourselves? So, deal fell through, and, the idea stuck with us. And so we said, hey, let's launch this brand. And, a lot of twists and turns that I won't bore your audience with today, although happy to share more about it, with anybody who's interested. But, we wound up, focusing on flannels, and ultimately as an influencer agency, this is really a proof of concept for us to be able to partner together with influencers to build and create a brand that's not heavily dependent upon them creating that content. I'll call it that, the hamster wheel of content creation. And so, we launched Muskox in 2019, and I literally just found this out yesterday. And it actually happened like 5 days ago, but we were selected organically by Gear Junkie. So a big, gear review site, as the best flannel. So, beats Patagonia, Eddie Bauer, Duluth, Prana, like lots of big names out there. So, we're just this little small company, this little engine that could, creating what we believe to be, great flannels, and to have that, validation in the market. And for clarity, because I know a lot of marketers here, this is totally organic. We did not pay, pay for this at all. And to have Gear Junkie identify us as top flannel, like that's something we were pretty stoked about.
That's pretty outstanding. And I will tell you very genuinely, yes, I'm an affiliate with Roots Music Rambler, but I honestly, genuinely tell you this. I don't wear a lot of flannels. I have like two that I've had forever that I like, that I'll wear, when it's cool out, or if I'm going to a football game or something like that. I ordered a couple, this one, and then another one, just to test them out and see if I liked them first. And I put the other one on, which is more of a red and gray, or burgundy and gray kind of pattern. And I put that on, and first of all, it fit me, which I'm a big dude. I'm not afraid to admit, I'm, a big, I wear 3X, which is big. It's hard to find shirts that fit me, especially button-up shirts, and certainly beyond that, even flannels. And so the first thing was, it fit me, and it was incredibly comfortable. And I love the Francesca, my co-host on the podcast, and I kind of make, when we're talking about it, we use this tagline you guys have on your website, which is, it's buttery soft, but built like a tank, like me. So they're very good quality shirts. I love mine.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And we weren't smart enough to come up with buttery soft, built like a tank ourselves. That was from a customer review. Again, just an authentic customer review, and we were like, whoa, that's pretty awesome and very accurate. So there's a lot that goes into it. I don't want this to become an advertise, but they're double brush, 100% cotton. The cotton's done right, and we donate back to the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. If you've never heard of muskox before, it's actually a proper animal. There you go. Beautiful shot on screen. Beautiful animal. It's kind of like a cross between a goat and a buffalo, or a boat, if you want to combine those two.
Sure. Or a guffalo.
Yeah, Guffalo would work too. And yes, the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, they do a lot of great work to support wildlife, including muskox in the great state of Alaska. So we give back for every flannel purchase there, because if we're going to be named after a muskox, we want to make sure we stay authentic.
Yes.
With what we're doing. So that's an important part of what we do.
I love it. It's fantastic. And I'm glad to be a part of it. So for those of you out there, I'm going to ask you, if you're interested in muskox, I'm going to ask you to go to the Roots Music Rambler link, which is gomuskox.com/Rambler, RAMBLER. And then if you use the code Rambler on checkout, you get a discount because you're a Roots Music Rambler listener. You may not be yet, but you need to go over to rootsmusicrambler.com and be one of those two. But gomuskox.com/Rambler is where you do that. Now, Brad, tell us where we can find you and the Out Loud group on their interwebs.
Well, I will do that. But first, let me say, Roots Music Rambler is a fantastic podcast. I was telling Jason this before we started. This is no BS. I hadn't seen it before. Yesterday, you shared it with me, and I couldn't stop watching it. And next thing you know, I was pulling my wife in. She had to watch segments of the podcast as well, and she appreciated it. Really appreciated it. And she's not even a country music fan as well. So, anyways. Yeah, so definitely big advocate for your podcast. But in terms of the Out Loud Group, we're influencer marketing agency. Check us out online, outloudgroup.com. That's going to be the best way for you to track us down, hit us up. I mean, you can check us out on all the social interwebs as well. But just our website and the contact form if you want to chat and talk influencer strategy. Hey, we're always here and happy to chat strategy.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure the links are in the show notes. We'll also make sure there's a link to Brad's LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with him directly. So make sure you get all those, and I'll come back after the break and remind everyone where those are. Brad, thanks so much for the time and the expertise today, and for reeling me in a little bit on that whole licensing stuff. I need that from time to time, so I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
It's always fun talking to fellow thinkers in the space. Be sure to connect with Brad and check out the Out Loud group up there in Detroit Rock City. We'll make sure the links are in the show notes, and order you up some muskox flannels, yo, just in time for fall. Comfy, buttery soft, but built like a tank, just like me. Go muskox.com/Rambler. That's Rambler. The code you use is also Rambler, Rambler, to get a discount. Go muskox.com. We'll make sure the links are in the show notes as well. You can find the show notes at jasonfalls.com. The latest episodes of Winfluence are now on the homepage just below the fold, so they're easy to find. Look for Brad Hoos there and click through to the episode. If you're on Instagram, you can also find the Brad Hoos episode. That post is on my IG. I'm at Jason Falls on Instagram. When you go to the Brad Hoos post, comment with hashtag Hoos, Hoos, his last name, hashtag Hoos. That will DM you the link you need, thanks to my pals at Stampede Social. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with someone else who may as well. And if you're enjoying Winfluence overall, help us grow. Tell somebody about the show. You probably know someone who might want to know more about influence marketing. Send them to winfluencepod.com or share a link to this episode on your social network of choice. If you have a moment, drop Winfluence a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. We are on them all. The show is now on video as well. Just look for Jason Falls Winfluence on YouTube to see the show as well as hear it. Winfluence is a production of Falls and Partners and presented by CIPIO.ai. The technical production is by MPN Studios. Winfluence airs along MPN, the Marketing Podcast Network. Thanks for listening, folks. Let's talk again soon on Winfluence.